Hello, beautiful people of the internet. My name is Ellie and bienvenidos to my YouTube channel. So today is my April wrap-up and I have already done like a mid-month check-in, so I'll link it up here if you haven't seen it. I'll go over the books that I have already talked about there really quickly. I'm not going to go into any detail, you can watch that video. So I read 10 books this month. And I was quite surprised. I added one graphic novel. The books that I have already read, that I've already talked about in my mid-month check-in, are The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, This Is Our Story by Ashley Elston, The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, A Stranger in the House by Sherry LaPina, and They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Those books, I have a more in-depth review on them if you want to check it out. Now I'm going to go into the other books that I read that were on my TBR. I'll go ahead and go in order by when I read them, so let's get started. So the first book that I read for my second half of the books on my April TBR is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, and this looks like an IKEA catalog. This is so cool, and it even has prices on the furniture, and then when you turn it to the back it just gets creepy. Sorry about the lights, guys, but it's pretty cool. So this is a horror book. It's a dark humor, I guess, but in this book we follow a group of 5 people. They work at a knockoff version of IKEA, which is called Orsk, O-R-S-K. They all have different positions in the store, and there are some mysterious things happening in the store. So there's a manager who picks certain individuals who make up this team of people, and they stay overnight to see if they can find out what is causing all these disturbances in the store. And basically from then on, it's just them trying to figure out what's happening, and all these like creepy clues come up. I was really surprised on this one. It was super good. I gave this, I believe, a 4 or 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. This was a recommendation from an employee at Barnes & Noble. I highly recommend this book to anybody who likes dark humor or like dark comedy. This is a really entertaining book. There was some spots where it was kind of slow and you were kind of like, okay, get to the point. This is not that long, and you see like the font is really big. I got through this really quick because it was really entertaining, and I did not want to stop reading this. I thought this was so creative, so just for that it gets a bunch of points from me. And also every chapter has like a diagram of a certain piece of furniture that will come up in the chapter. It is awesome. You notice little details like the serial numbers on the furniture. All of them have 666 on it. If you like horror and you like comedy, like a little comedy in your horror books, I definitely recommend this one. Please check it out. I want everybody to read this because everybody needs to experience this book at least once. Really awesome discovery. Thank you so much, Ashley at Barnes & Noble. You were the true MVP for recommending this to me. After that, I read Dear Martin by Nick Stone. We follow Justice, which is an African-American young man, and he is very well accomplished. He has really good grades. He's really smart, and one night when his then girlfriend was very drunk, he got into a very bad situation with a police officer. That was one incident, and then there's a different incident where him and one of his best friends, they also have a altercation with an off-duty officer, and that one does not end well. After that, it's Justice's spiral into finding out his identity and what it means to be an African American in today's society, things of that nature. The cool thing about this is Justice tries to deal with everything that's happening around him by writing letters to Martin Luther King. So that's why it's called Dear Martin, because all his letters start with Dear Martin, because he's addressing Dr. Martin Luther King. And I thought that was really cool. And he is trying to be like Dr. Martin Luther King, asking himself, what would Martin do in this situation? So I thought that was a really cool take. This book deals with a lot of social issues and a lot of injustices and police brutality. It alludes to what's going on in the world right now. This is a very hard subject to tackle, but I think that Nick did a really fantastic job. Nick wrote about recent events in this book that just opens up that dialogue even more and brings to light how things aren't fair still in this day and age, because there's still unnecessary police brutality against different races. I think Nick Stone did a really fabulous job on this book. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5. In a certain extent, I could kind of relate to Justice, and I think that is successful in itself because I could relate to the main character. I really like this book. It was really quick. She packed a lot of punches with this book, and I really appreciate it because subjects like these, you can't tiptoe around the issue. You basically have to go like full head on. I appreciate it. Everyone should read this book. So next up on my list is Before the Fall by Noah Hawley. This one, you guys, was a struggle for me to finish. I almost DNF'd this book, and I never do that. If I start something, I want to finish it. But the way that this was written, ooh, it was a struggle for me. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads because I liked how it ended. The ending explains a lot, but to get to that ending, a lot that was in here was not necessary. And it was a lot of description. And also, the font on this is so tiny. So this book is about like almost 400 pages. Because of how small the print was, it took forever to read these 400 pages. We follow our main protagonist, which his name is Scott, and he was on this plane with 2 families, and this plane crashed. This family was very wealthy. The husband owned a TV network, so he was very well known. The son is the only remaining survivor from this crash. I thought in this book we were going to delve into the relationship between Scott and the surviving boy, but in actuality, it was more of Scott. He's an artist, and he claims that he's a failed artist because he dreamed of being an artist, but it didn't really take off anywhere until after this crash. We see like all these different supporting characters, and we see how the story starts to progress, but it progresses extremely slowly. In some parts, I was just bored to tears, you guys. I really struggled with the writing in this book. When I went to Goodreads to see the ratings on it, everybody was rating this 4 and 5 stars. And I'm just sitting here like, am I reading the same thing? Because I was struggling, but finished it. I did not see where this was going, which was a pleasant surprise, but I was not happy that I had to wait till the last like 50 pages to find out what happened. This is an adult thriller, so if you guys like adult thrillers that are very descriptive and very slow burning, I'm pretty sure you guys would enjoy this. For me, I didn't particularly like the writing too much, so that's what made me struggle with this a lot. It's not horrible, but I wouldn't reread this again. So Before the Fall, 3 out of 5. It was okay. So because of that book, I had to read something trivial, something fun, something that I knew would get my interest back into reading, because that book almost put me in a reading slump again, and I don't want to do that because there's a lot of books that I want to read. A lot of disclaimers on this one because this one deals with a lot of dark issues. The graphic novel that I chose to reread is Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Jonan Vasquez. If you guys don't know, Jonan Vasquez, creator of Invader Zim, the cartoon. So if you guys have seen that and you like that type of humor, this is a darker version of that. And that's because Invader Zim already is pretty dark for a cartoon. We follow Johnny, which is of course the main character. And this is totally dark because he does murder people. There are some chapters where it deals with suicide, him trying to commit suicide. So this is not a light read. I read this when I was a teenager and I was super in my angst days, but I loved Invader Zim. That TV show was my jam. So when I found out that he created a graphic novel, I had to get my hands on it. Reading about the darker side of human nature is why I like this. It's not for everybody. Just those issues alone cuts out like a lot of people. Like I said, I had to get something to stop me from going into a reading slump. So this is what I chose. Not everybody's gonna like this. This is a really hard one to say that I recommend or not because it deals with taboo things like murder and suicide and evil and things like that. Tread with caution with this one. If you guys like Invader Zim, I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy this. If you don't, stay away from it. Don't even think about it. If you guys don't like reading about death and suicide or seeing anything gory, don't even think about this. Pass it up. This is kind of a controversial one, but it is what it is. That's the graphic novel that I chose, and it totally did pull me out of that almost reading slump. So thanks, Jonan. And last but not least, this hunker of a book, Night Film by Marisha Pessl. So in this book, we follow a jaded personal investigator. Follow him, two other characters. They form this team who are trying to find out what happened to Ashley Cordova, which is our main female, who they find ends up dead. All three of these characters have some sort of tie to Ashley, and from there they just want to figure out what happened to her. So this is a psychological thriller that was extremely long. Also, this one took me a little longer to read as well because it was long. Like I told you in my March TBR that I'll link up here if you guys haven't seen it. The only thing I knew about this was that it was creepy, and it is extremely creepy. Once you get into more intense scenes in this book, I remember I didn't even want to turn off the lights because I was on edge. I was so creeped out, which means I'm reading a really good book because it takes a lot for me to get scared from a book, but this book gave me the creeps. This has everything in here. It's a psychological thriller, an adult thriller, and it has murder, it has black magic or brujeria, witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. It has this intense obsession towards Ashley's father, which everyone just calls Cordova. This whole book basically revolves around Cordova and trying to figure him out, trying to find him. I definitely recommend this book if you guys like psychological thrillers or thrillers in general. Towards the middle, there's a lot of just unnecessary writing that you don't need. Again, a lot of description. This journalist, it'll just go through his day-to-day, and you don't really need that. That has nothing to do with the story. Only thing with this is that there's some things that were left open that were not resolved. I didn't appreciate the way that some things were just left unsolved. That's one of the downsides of this. I believe I gave this, I think it was like a 3.5 or 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because as much as it did creep me out, it wasn't perfect. It's not the best psychological thriller that I've read. Like I said, the fact that a lot of stuff weren't explained and weren't closed, I didn't really like that, so that's why that took off points. It was a very entertaining read. It wasn't what I was expecting at all, so I appreciate it. So I would totally recommend this one if you guys want to read it. Okay guys, so that was my April TBR. That was 11 books. The only thing I want to put out there is the whole Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Just by the title in itself, you know that it's gonna be a darker graphic novel. Tread with caution if you want to read that one. I enjoyed the books that I read. The ones that I would honestly recommend to you, that I would love for you to read if you guys get the chance, is Horror Store, This Is Our Story, Night Film, and The Wicked Deep. The Wicked Deep is #1 that I read from my April TBR. That book was so good. Like I said, if you like witches, totally get into that book. You will not be disappointed. Actually, I'm thinking about every monthly wrap up, I want to rate the books from 1 to 10. What do you guys think about that? I think I'm gonna start doing that. So not for this month, but starting in May, I'll go ahead and start doing that and ranking them from 1 to 10. That would show y'all like the books that I would truly recommend for you guys to read. Thank you guys for joining me today, for giving me some of your time. I'm sorry if I was like all over the place. I had way too much on my mind that I wanted to say at once. Thank you guys again for taking the time out to hang out with me today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!